concession of Gordon Brown this morning. Let's get some reaction from Theresa May, the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary. Just returning to that interview that Gordon Brown gave then, Theresa May, do you believe that he listened too hard to industry?
Well, what I think is that this is an extraordinary admission from Gordon Brown at last that he got the regulation of the banks wrong. We've been saying for some time that he got the regulation wrong, and that's why we think that the tripartite system of regulation which he set up, and remember this bank crisis took place under a system of regulation that Gordon Brown had himself established. We think that system needs to change. That's why we would be taking bank regulation back to the Bank of England and creating a powerful new consumer protection agency.
And what we just heard from Ed Balls was that the Conservatives were putting even more pressure on the Labour government there to make pressure lighter, less regulation from you.
No, what we were absolutely clear about was that we were sceptical about this tripartite system of regulation that Gordon Brown set up, where he took some responsibility for bank regulation away from the Bank of England, gave it to the Financial Services Authority.
Well, I know that's what you're talking about now, but Ed Balls said, his exact phrase, the Conservatives told us we were being much too tough. Do you remember those days?
No, what I'm saying, not just what we're saying now, but what we were saying at the time was that we were sceptical about this process of tripartite regulation that the government was setting up. And exactly what we saw happening was that effectively nobody had overall oversight, nobody was looking at the whole picture, and that's one of the reasons why I think we saw the circumstances occurring that did, because nobody was looking at both the individual banks and the overall market debt position. And that's why it's important to take regulation of the banks back into the Bank of England, but also to ensure that consumer protection is very strong through a strong new consumer protection agency.
It's very interesting you say the overall picture, because this quote that I will go back to from Gordon Brown, you don't listen to the industry when they say this is good for us, you've got to talk about the whole public interest. I imagine a lot of people now are saying the Tories are listening very hard to business, very hard to those business chiefs who want to see no raise on national insurance. They're going to open up a new can of worms by making exactly the same mistake that Gordon Brown's just admitted he made.
No, I think the person who's going to make a mistake is Gordon Brown with his jobs tax. And you talk about the listening to business or the public interest. Actually, the public interest is not to kill recovery. And Labour's jobs tax will kill recovery. And that's why we're clear that we need to avoid Labour's jobs tax. 7 out of 10 working people would be better off under the Conservatives as a result of what we would do in relation to that national insurance increase. And it's Gordon Brown's decision to put that jobs tax on, which I fear is going to kill recovery and will cost people jobs.
Nick Clegg announced today that he thinks he can save an extraordinary amount of money by closing tax loopholes that neither you nor Labour are looking at. He's the only one mentioning the recession and the need for serious cuts at the moment.
Well, I'm afraid that, Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrats talk about a new politics, but what we've seen from them today in their manifesto and some of the claims that they've made is just really rather the same old approach. There is a £10 billion hole in the figures from the Liberal Democrats. I mean, one of those areas you've just mentioned, the tax avoidance figures, no details about how that can actually be achieved.
Well, actually, he did. He said he would talk to, for example, the big corporations that are avoiding stamp duty or paying just 4% of stamp duty, way below the market rate. If a Conservative government was mentioning that or a Labour government was mentioning that, they could save an enormous amount of money.
Well, all governments want to ensure that people and businesses are paying the tax that it is appropriate for them to be paying. But the Liberal Democrats are making significant claims about this, which simply don't stack up. And, far from the new politics, this is just more of the sort of same old approach of just putting in figures without backing them up. And as I say, there's a £10 billion hole in the Liberal Democrats' manifesto claims today. And the only party that is actually offering people a new approach to politics is us at the Conservatives, as we set out yesterday with our manifesto launch, a new approach which says that actually it's not about government taking all the decisions and having all the answers, it's actually about us working together.
Theresa May, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, we'll have plenty more from the election campaign trail here in the coming minutes, but you're watching BBC News. The time is edging up to 20 minutes past 11.